On this week's show, Moncton Magic Head Coach, NBL Canada Champion and Coach of the Year, Joe Salerno. Joe, thanks so much for taking the time today. Very uncertain times. The first question is, how are you, and how are your family?
Oh, well, I'm doing all right, Craig, and thanks for having me on. I've been looking forward to doing this with you for a little while. So we're doing well. We're doing as well as we can. Right now I continue to try to just keep in perspective. There's a lot of people much worse off than myself and my family right now. With COVID-19. So we're getting through each day, and I think really ask of anybody. So we're doing well.
The Magic and yourself have been tied into this community for a long, long time. And when this all started, you tweeted something out about going out into the community. That takes a lot of courage and bravery. First of all, we commend you for that. Secondly, how's the team, and how often have you talked to the guys? Very unfortunate circumstances, and sadly, the NBL of Canada has canceled the remainder of the season.
Yeah, it's difficult. It certainly was a difficult pill to swallow. Obviously when the league suspended operations, there was always a bit of hope in the back of your mind that things may drastically change, quickly, and we might be able to get back on track. Obviously, we were having a great season, and we were certainly on a roll when the stoppage of play happened. But when you heard it was they were canceling the season for good, it was difficult. It was certainly difficult to kind of grasp and comprehend. And such a tight knit group of guys that we have in our organization, and players, I think, formed last year after winning that championship, and I feel like we were all kind of there for each other, and we kind of had each other's back. That's made it a lot easier, and we've kind of chatted, here and there. I talk to guys every couple of days, just kind of touch in, see how they're doing, and we still have a big group chat going on. So we're staying in touch, and all the guys are doing well.
This season can't be pushed back, and the league can't be pushed back, because I think a lot of people don't realize that the players in the NBL of Canada play in other leagues throughout the year. So you just can't delay the season in other leagues like the National Hockey League or the NBA and push things back.
Yeah, no, I really don't. I didn't ever kind of foresee that being a possibility, with the NBL Canada. I mean, especially when you're talking about, all the teams in our league. They also, they share venues with whether it's Q teams or OHL teams. And, I knew once it was suspended, there was a good chance that it probably wasn't going to come back. And, unfortunately, it just wasn't in the cards. And, there certainly is a lot more things that are more important than basketball and the NBL Canada going on in the world right now. So, we got to put those things in the forefront, and, just again, try to reflect on some of the positive things that happened this season, and, try to move forward, look forward.
Looking back at last year's team and now this year's team, what comparisons? And a lot of people were saying that the 2019-2020 Magic were even deeper and stronger than last year's championship team.
Yeah, it's a tough comparison. I mean, it makes me smile because they were just two great teams, and two teams I was very proud to be part of. It's tough to say. Last year's team, the championship team, I mean, Trey Coe was just such a special player and such a huge part of our champion success. And, I actually thought we had a little bit more of a deeper bench, last year, with guys like Freddie McSwain and Gentry Thomas and Joel Nadondo. This year, it was only a 10-man roster, but having 7 of those guys back from that championship team last year, and having that chemistry, amongst the several of them, and then adding some great new pieces in Jeremiah Morty and Ronald Delph, et cetera. Both were very, very tough teams. I would have loved to have watched those two teams kind of go at it in a 7-game series, but both are great clubs.
Let's go way back to your playing days. What's your earliest recollection of playing basketball?
I think it's the connection with my father. I'm very, very close to my father, and he started coaching me. I think I was in grade two, so I was probably maybe 7, 8 years old when I started playing, and he coached me all the way up until I started high school. He actually even coached our team in junior high. So, when I think way back about kind of how I started and how I got involved with the game to begin with, I think I just enjoyed it more than any other sport because I think my father had such a big part in it, and we had such a tight relationship. So, thinking back to youth sports in general, and I played them all. I love sports. It's what we did every day. I think I was drawn to basketball a little bit more again, just because of that kind of connection and the time I got to spend with my father.
What was Joe Salerno the player like?
Slow. um, no, I was a pretty good player. I was a pretty good high school player, and probably would have been a decent small college player too. I was definitely a pure point guard. I was certainly a kind of extended coach on the floor. I wasn't the most athletic guy or the quickest guy, but I could shoot it a little bit, and my thing was definitely kind of directing traffic. That's what I did. That's what I love doing, kind of setting other guys up. And but yeah, I mean, I played the point guard position, pretty much ever since I started playing the game. But I was all right. I wasn't too bad, Craig. I could hold my own.
When did you realize that your playing career was going to end, but that passion and courage to step behind the bench, so to speak? And when did you know that you had that in you to be a coach?
My father told me when I was a kid, you're going to be a great coach. You're going to be a coach. And I never thought I was going to coach. I thought I was going to play in the NBA like every other 13-year-old. But for me, I suffered a significant ankle injury my freshman year of college. Tore three ligaments, broke my ankle, and that was kind of it. Took a year off, actually transferred schools, went to a school in upstate New York after that. And that's when I kind of started coaching youth kids. I missed the game an awful lot, so here I was, a 20-year-old, in college and coaching youth basketball. And that kind of turned into then coaching at my former high school, and then kind of up and up it went. But I don't think I ever really thought about coaching as a profession until I was probably 25, 26, and that's when I realized I was coaching high school basketball. That hey, I really enjoy doing this. I wonder if I can make a career out of it. So that's kind of really when it started for me.
How devastating was that injury at the time, Joe? And did you realize that was pretty much it?
It was extremely difficult to take. Of course, a school player that takes the game seriously. I mean, their whole thing is I want to play in college, and for me, it was a small college in Massachusetts, Bridgewater State University, which is a small Division III school. But yeah, I mean, suffering that injury, it was pretty devastating. I mean, I knew I wasn't playing again for the rest of that season, and I think being a young kid, a freshman in college, being away from home, there's an awful lot of things you can get involved in, in college. And, so, but it's all right. I got to experience an awful lot of things. And again, that kind of led me to transferring schools and meeting my wife and starting to coach youth basketball. So it was tough at the time, but looking back at it now, I certainly don't regret it.
The 24, 5, or 4 year old Joe Salerno, what did he learn that now has really helped you become the coach that you are? What, in those early days, what did you learn and how did you apply that to your coaching career now?
Well, I think when I first really started coaching, it was at the high school level, and being able to communicate with your players, I found out almost right out of the gate. You have to be able to do that. They have to respect you, but you also have to be able to enjoy your time with them because you're with them an awful lot. So I think me knowing communicating with players, no matter what level it was going to be, was going to be important, and they had to trust you and they had to respect you, but they also had to get along. I think once I moved into the pro ranks as an assistant coach, I mean, when I was 27, the first thing I learned was, wow, this is a lot of work. Like you really don't ever punch a clock, and you can always be learning new things and try to be a sponge as much as you possibly can. Steal, beg, borrow from anybody, any coach you can meet. And I learned that from a young age, and that's something I still do to this day. So, those were definitely a couple of things I learned early on in my coaching days.
How do you build that respect and that connection with young players, Joe?
Yeah, I think for me, it was that transition. It kind of happened easy for me because I was such a young head coach. I was from the same era of a lot of my players. Obviously talking about when I was at the professional level now. Here I was a 29-year-old head coach, and I was coaching guys, a year or two younger than me, and I could just relate to them a little bit. We listened to the same music, we liked the same players growing up. I think that allowed me to start establishing a relationship with them and being able to communicate with them. And, that was really kind of a blessing in disguise at the time. Coach, it was like being thrown into the fire, and you had to learn quick, and you had to gain guys' respect. But it also helped me in an awful lot of ways too, just being able to communicate. So, yeah, it was good. It was a nice transition.
How do you separate being a player's coach to really sending the message and getting
Mm.
that message across to all your players that you're still the guy in control and really running the show?
Yeah, it's about being consistent. You can't have a day where you decide to kind of slack off a little bit and maybe let guys get away with this in practice, or or you hang out with the guys outside of the job and all those things. Like you can't do those things. You need to have a consistent presence with your players. You have to know when to kind of get a message across. And I also think it's about knowing the personalities of your players. I communicate differently with all 10 guys on our roster. I know, and you just start learning what buttons to kind of push. But, more so than anything, Craig, I think establishing that line of respect and that kind of authoritative line, it's really about being consistent day in and day out with the messages you're giving to your players.
Well, Joe, don't go anywhere. Obviously, we can't go anywhere, but
Right.
we're going to be right back. We're going to talk recruitment when we come back and talk to Joe Salerno on Sports Inclusive. So we're back with Joe Salerno. Joe, before the break, we were talking about consistency. Now, consistency with recruitment. How do you recruit? And you're the architect of building some amazing NBL of Canada teams.
Well, thank you very much. For me, recruiting, it's really understanding what you're looking for, and it's kind of establishing a benchmark, before the off season starts of kind of mapping out exactly what you're looking for, and then it's about hard work, Craig. It's about being on the phone constantly. Over the years, I've been able to establish a network of agents and other coaches, people that I trust when it comes to players, and then kind of getting out on the road and meeting guys. I think it's so important to not only see players play in person because everyone looks good on a highlight reel, but also being able to meet them, talk with them, watch them in public, kind of how they handle themselves. And a lot of that comes down to you're looking at the character of a player. But really, more so than anything, know what you're looking for. If you don't, you're going to get overwhelmed. And then stick to it and kind of trust your gut and your instincts on what you want your team to look like, and find the right pieces.
You mentioned one thing, being on the road. How difficult and how many sacrifices have your family made? And behind an amazing coach is always an amazing support staff. What what impact have they had on your career to this point?
Yeah, it's very true, and I don't think that's talked about enough in sports. I don't think any coach can really do his job effectively and have success without having a strong support system at home, and that's my wife and my two children and my father, and so that's extremely important. But there's so much that comes with this job. Like I said, you don't ever really punch a clock, and that even happens in the off season when you're constantly watching film, traveling the months of July and August. I'm basically around here. So, just to know that your family's doing okay, that they understand, FaceTiming a lot, and that's all very, very important things. It's important to kind of keep a strong home base, and I think it allows me to do my job a lot better, to be honest with you.
You're mentioning the agents and that connection. How do you build that trust with agents that really want to promote their guys, but you also have to make sure that they fit both culturally and from a character perspective?
Yeah, I think we do work with agents a lot. I would say probably maybe 60% of the players in our league, are represented by agents. So establishing relationships with them and really networking. When I go out to Las Vegas in July during NBA Summer League, I mean, it is the mecca of basketball in the summer, and there's multiple exposure camps and combines, and you just want to meet as many people as possible, and just establish a line of communication with them. And I think that trust really happens between a coach and an agent. Once you have a good deal, you got a player that was as advertised by that agent. It worked out, and then you're going to kind of go back to that well. You're going to kind of trust what that guy's telling you and what he's selling you. So it takes a while to establish it, but once you have some good ones, it makes your job a lot easier.
Let's look at the connection with the community here locally with Moncton. Who approached you first to come on board with the Magic, and what have you learned about yourself and the city over your time here, Joe?
Yeah, so I mean, spending 6 years on Prince Edward Island before we came to Moncton, I obviously was familiar with Moncton a little bit. We played the Miracles for so many years, and I'd been over here often. I was approached, I think it was by Mike Story, who's the VP of the Magic, 3 years ago. Once they got word that I was parting ways with the Storm, and they asked me if I'd be interested in interviewing the position. Um, I was, we certainly wanted to stay in the Maritimes. My family has really grown to love it here. So, went for an interview, and as soon as I left the door, I knew this was a place that I was going to want to work. I felt that the ownership and management really kind of had their head in the right places, and they had very common goals that I had, and that was winning and bringing a successful basketball organization to the city of Moncton. The city itself has really grown on me. I didn't really know what to expect, and I lived in Cornwall, PEI, for a few years, very, very small. So this is a little bit of a bigger setting, but we moved into a great neighborhood in the old West End here. My kids go to Besborough School. They absolutely love it. They can walk to school every morning, and it's just been a really, really nice fit. And the city of Moncton has really kind of welcomed us here, and it's I really can't thank them enough. So as much as I can do to give back to them, I certainly will.
Looking right now, where does Joe Salerno want to be 3 years from now?
Mm. Healthy first. I mean, I want to be healthy. I have two pretty active kids, so I got to make sure I stay healthy for them. But no, I think from a basketball perspective, it can go a lot of places. I'm still pretty young when it comes to coaching. I just turned 38 years old this past winter, and I've been at it as a head coach for almost 11 years now. Um, the university game certainly has my interest a little bit. I think that's an avenue I haven't gone yet, and one I think I could be successful in. So I'm a little curious about university basketball and maybe looking that way. And then of course, there's the NBA G League, there's Europe, there's multiple basketball markets all over the world that obviously is of interest. But again, to me, I always try to put the family first, and I want to make sure my kids have a great childhood where dad is home and we're not moving around too much. And so 3 years from now, I hope I'm certainly established somewhere and coaching basketball, and just my family's doing well. That's really the most important thing for me.
Would you take an assistant coaching role in a big college or U.S. college to get that experience, or do you want to move directly into a head coaching role?
Yeah, I'm not I wouldn't be opposed to really kind of shutting the door on any possible situation if I thought it was going to be a good one for myself and for my family. It would be interesting, being an assistant coach. I've been a head coach for a while now, and I'm certainly pretty strongly opinionated, but you want that in assistant coaches sometimes. So no, I wouldn't be opposed to it at all. But I really kind of I like Canada, so I think if I was to look at maybe youth sports, something like that, it would certainly be more in a head coaching role. But I'm not opposed at all to looking G League or NCAA Division One or staying in the NBL Canada, right? So, we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Coaching and learning. You said before, Joe, it's a 24/7 job. How important is it for young coaches to learn, and experienced coaches for that matter, to continue to learn not only about the players and how to motivate this era of players, but to also learn more about the game?
It's vital. I mean, you can't ever stop learning, or you can't ever kind of feel comfortable that you've learned enough, and what you're doing is going to be good enough, because the game changes, players are changing. Um, you can always be picking up something new. I think one of the most important things a young coach can do is let their guard down. I think sometimes, coaches, it's an ego thing, and you want to show that you belong, or you know as much as the next guy. And especially as a young, you have to let that guard down. You have to be willing to ask questions, and let people know that you're trying to learn more. And I think that gets overlooked a lot. So, just be open, and again, be a sponge. Meet as many people as you can, ask as many questions as you can. It's only going to make you better in the long run.
You were talking about your assistant coaching in that role. How important have your assistant coaches been here in Moncton, and maybe just discuss their impact on you as a coach and their impact on the players?
Yeah, they've been great. I mean, obviously, we have two full-time assistant coaches in Elvin Mims and Mitch Rowley. Mitch has been with me for 8 years now, and he's grown immensely over that time. I always joke with him. I always say the only thing that's grown more than Mitch is his wardrobe in that time. So um, he's been great. Elvin, just finished his second year as an assistant coach at the pro level, and I think he's going to be looking for possibly some head coaching jobs. And Todd and Matt. Todd McKillop and Matt Robertson, part-time guys, local Moncton guys. They've been great. And, I always say I'm always learning from my assistant coaches, and I want them to suggest new things, and find new things that maybe we should be looking to do, and kind of present it to me, and let's talk about it. And those guys have been great. They played a huge role in our success. Especially, Elvin and Mitch, they really kind of handle most of our scouting, our opponent scouting, and individual scouting reports. And that stuff is really important to a successful team. So those guys have been great, and I know a couple of those guys, Mitch and Elton, have been doing this for a little while. Like, they're going to have successful coaching careers moving forward.
One of your strengths is breaking down your opposition as a coach, and from a defensive side and an offensive side. Where do you see the game going, Joe?
Man, it's just, I'd love to see it go in more of a defensive mentality, more of that kind of late '80s, early '90s kind of NBA physical brand of basketball where every bucket is tough. But I don't think it's going that way. You just see basketball getting smaller and smaller. Players playing multiple positions. I shouldn't say smaller. Teams are playing smaller, meaning they're playing their 4-5s at the guard position, and it's so much more open minded, open floor, high scoring. I don't see it changing anytime soon. I think it's just going to continue to be more of an offensive minded game. And that's what I kind of base my philosophy around, is like, hey, if we can be that one team to get stops consistently, it's going to put us ahead of everybody else. So, but it's the game. I love watching. I'm a big NBA fan. It's great entertainment, and, so is the NBL Canada. And it's just, it's fun to watch it, how it kind of, changes year to year.
How intense is Joe Salerno, the coach?
I can get intense. I can definitely get intense. There's no doubt. But I think I've calmed down with the more experience I've gotten. I tell a quick story. The owner of our team, the Magic here, my first year, I was thrown out of a game, and I really kind of lost my temper, like really lost my temper. And he just said to me after, he said, "Joe, what would you look like if you just used that energy on our players and actually coaching the game rather than, yelling at officials or whatnot. And I've kept that, and I've kind of used that a lot, even when it comes to being intense with my guys in practice, really trying to just focus on what exactly is going to help us in this moment, adjusting in the game itself. But I can get fairly intense, Craig. You know, that happens sometimes.
Are you that intense? Scott Jones said you're that intense on the golf course. Any truth to that?
Oh man, Scott's a good golfer, by the way. Scott's a very good golfer. No, man, I try to lighten up in the summer, and golf to me kind of it fills that competitive void. It's so competitive in the winter for me every day, practice and games every single day. To me, golf, it's the only game you can't win, right? That's what they say. So always competing to try to get that lower score. It fills those competitive juices for me. But I'm pretty laid back. We have a good time, and hit the ball around a little bit, and um, definitely a passion of mine. So I'm not that intense on the golf course.
Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to come on Sports Inclusive. You are an amazing coach, a very passionate family man, and the game of basketball and Joe Salerno are forever united. Stay safe, Joe, and all the best to you and your family. Thanks for this.